Hi, me again, and I'm back on a website that I've been frequenting a bit recently. It keeps popping up in my TV license fee alerts that I have on Google. Slipdisc, the #1 classical music website. We've talked about it recently because the cuts that the BBC are making to the orchestras, the 6 orchestras and the hundreds of musicians that they pay for with your TV license fees for no reason whatsoever that I can ascertain. They also have a choir, and Slipdisc, they're passionate about this sort of thing, as is their right to be. You can be passionate about whatever you want to be passionate about. They're not happy with the cuts that the BBC are making, so there's a lot of stories about it. And they've sent a letter of complaint to the BBC and received a reply, which I thought was interesting. So I thought I'd share it with you. Have a look. What the BBC tells viewers who complain about classical cuts. So this was posted on March the 19th. Here's the standard sod-off letter, replete with factual inaccuracies and grammatical errors. Quite the BBC fan I see there at the moment. What was your name? Norman. Good on you, Norman. Right, let's have a look at this letter. Dear audience member, thanks for contacting us. We recognise that some English orchestras. This is from the BBC, and this is a straight copy of it. We recognise that some of our audience will be disappointed about the proposed closure to the BBC singers and reduction of the salaried roles in BBC orchestras. I get why Slipdisc would be upset about it, I do. But I think it's ridiculous that, it's a niche thing, isn't it? And the licence fee is paid by all households in the UK, and you can't please all the people all the time. But I think it's fair to say that the majority of British households don't care about supporting orchestras and a choir via the BBC. I think that's fair to say, do you not? These proposals form part of our wider strategy for classical music announced on the 7th of March that has a focus on modernising the orchestras, performing in more venues across the UK and doubling our investment in music education. You need to play in a lot more venues and start charging entrance fees if you want to actually break even on the cost of these orchestras. I don't think it would be possible. The BBC, as the biggest commissioner of music and one of the biggest employers of musicians in the country, let that sink in. Let that sink in. The BBC is one of the biggest employers of musicians in the country. The British Broadcasting Corporation that you pay your licence fee to so you can watch shows on the telly and probably listen to the radio in your car. They're the biggest employer of, or one of the biggest employers of musicians in the country. Why? Why are you? We consulted widely as part of the BBC's Classical Review, which looked at the classical music sector and the BBC's role within it and set out the findings last year. We also confirmed we were looking to reduce the licence fee funding for our performing groups. Good. You shouldn't have any licence fee funding. Programmes is what you should be focusing on. With a flat licence fee and high inflation, we have had to look at where we can save money. There are many places they could save money. So 3.7, I've said it 1,000 times, haven't I? 3.7 billion quid a year they get from licence fees at the moment, which looks like it might rise soon. They've got a £300 million black hole in their finances. Just sacking off or offering voluntary redundancy to some of these musicians and getting rid of the choir, they reckon saves £5 million a year. How much more is being spent on these that could fill that £300 million black hole? And the other thing is, there's other stuff out there. That's why they're making changes to news and radio. But the BBC World Service should be 100% government funded if the government want a propaganda mouthpiece around the world, because that costs about 300 million quid a year. So if they sacked off the World Service, they could operate as they are now with the orchestras and the choirs and everything and not make any changes. They could just run dead even. Taking the very difficult decision to close the BBC Singers does mean we will be able to work with and feature a wider range of independent choirs, bringing more varied programming to our audiences wherever they are in the UK. We will establish a nationwide choral. This is boring, isn't it? Anything interesting in here? We believe this new strategy will help us reach a wider audience for classical music. I know it's a thing and I know people enjoy it. I'm not allergic to classical music. I have listened to it. I would listen to it. It wouldn't be my first choice of music, and I think I speak for the majority of people in the country. Is there a wider audience in it? Because the audience, how I see it, I could very well be wrong here. The audience that I see for classical music is a bit older, right? And they ain't going to be knocking around forever. Can you make it reach a wider audience? I can't imagine my niece who's 24 or my other niece who's 12 if I sat them down and played them some Bach or something, they'd be like, put some Nicki Minaj on or something. We will champion the distinctiveness of our 5 orchestras and be able to perform a wider range of music to a larger audience. 5 orchestras. The BBC pay for 5 orchestras, full-time. How many musicians? I did a video on it. It's a lot. And they're on full-time money. 5 orchestras. We do value audience feedback. All complaints are sent to senior management, and we've included your points in our overnight report. These reports are among the most widely read sources of feedback and ensures that your concerns have been seen by the right people. Not the right people who can spell or do grammar, though. So yeah, I just thought I'd bring you that. So the BBC are still involved in choirs, are still going to be involved in orchestras. They're just going to do it slightly differently. Why are they doing it slightly differently? Is it going to save any money? I doubt it. They've brought in a head of orchestras who's obviously on a 6-figure salary to manage this, who Slip Disc don't like, apparently. It beggars belief that the BBC want to spend this amount of money on something to suit such a small audience in the UK. I know you've got to please all the people all the time when you're funding stuff like that, but why do the BBC need to maintain 5 orchestras and all those musicians? Why can't they just hire an orchestra when they need it for something? And then that's championing British orchestras as well, isn't it? Because you're paying them directly that way. Why you need 5 orchestras? It's beyond me. Yeah, as always with Slip Disc, there's loads of comments about this. So I've got the link in the description if you want to go and have a look and read some of their comments over there. And think in the comments, let me know what you think about this and the orchestras, as always, down in the comments below. And thanks for watching, and I'll see you later.